Hi everyone, welcome to Woolen Spinning. This is episode 130. My name is Rachel as always, and welcome to this place. I can be found pretty much everywhere as well for pearls, and it is so good to be back. We had to cancel last week's live stream and move it to this week, which is Wednesday, December 11th, 2019, because I was in sick all week last week with the flu. I had massive fevers and chills and the whole shebang. I could not stop coughing. I actually, at one point, I knew I was getting kind of dehydrated and I was getting a bit concerned, but I was able to pull through, and we are here recording. So we have a really big show. We've started a couple minutes early, but I really wanted to say hello and just sort of say hello to everybody in the chat. Last episode, I actually put in, so if you looked at the show notes, underneath the initial, thank you for being here, blah, 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 the little note that I write, I actually put timestamps. It's the first time that we've done that. I know that when I am following a podcast that I really enjoy and I am time crunched and I want to skip to a certain part of the podcast and listen to a certain thing, or if I'm going back for reference and I want to look at something in particular, I really appreciate having the timestamps. And it's been something that I've been hoping that I could implement in time. So last episode had those timestamps, and I'm hoping that we can do that going forward. So if the podcast sort of goes a bit long, or we get sort of waylaid with stuff, or we get a bit sidetracked, then at least with the timestamps, when you guys go back and watch it later, you can skip to the parts that you really want to watch. So I hope that that is really helpful. So hi to everybody in chat. You guys are already just chatting away. It's wonderful. Suzanne, welcome. I know you're here 2 days in a row. You were here for the wool stream yesterday, which is our live stream that we do twice a month. We talk a lot about capsule wardrobe, weaving, some of the stuff that just can't make it into the regular podcast because there's just too much to talk about. So it's good to see you 2 days in a row, Suzanne. Sarah, fresh snow. Wonderful. We have rain. Typical. I'm coming to you from just outside of Vancouver, British Columbia, and it's been quite a rainy couple of weeks so far. Good to see you, Charlotte. Good to see you, San, Britta, Sarah, Diane, Joanna. Welcome, Joanna. I think this might be your first stream, so welcome. And for those who are struggling or who are newer patrons, or are maybe have been patrons for a while but have always struggled with getting into the live stream and getting into the live chat, I have published a post on Patreon just to give you some help, and I have linked that in the show notes. I think it's in the show notes. Should be in the show notes. If it's not in the show notes, I will add it. Yeah, if it's not in the show notes, I will add it. But for those who've sort of always struggled with getting into the live chat, there's a sort of a catch-all tutorial post to give you some visuals of how to get into the chat if you're struggling. So I hope that is helpful. So it is 11, so I think we will get started. We're live streaming at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. This seems to be the time that works for most people. The chat seems to be the most busy at that time. We've tried other days, we've tried other times. In an effort to just be consistent and to have a regular time that you guys know that the live stream is happening at that time, at that day, throughout the days, weeks, months, I think we're going to be sticking with 11 a.m. on Wednesday mornings starting in January, because it provides consistency for me as well as for you guys. And then you just know that, on this first and third Wednesday of every month that there is a live stream. We are this close. We've been this close for a while to reaching 300 patrons as part of our community here at Woolen Spinning. And when we hit 300, we will be going to a weekly live stream, which is just mind-boggling to me. I just can't believe we're there. So in an effort to sort of have that consistency of having the same time and being able to move toward a weekly live stream, I sort of thought we should just pick a time and we'll just stick with it. So I hope that that is okay with everyone. Oh, I'm glad, Suzanne, that it was really helpful. It definitely is a bit different on mobile. You're right. And if you're in, this is for getting into the live chat. If you're on Apple, it's a little bit different as well. So I'm glad that that was helpful. All right. If you're having trouble getting the video and the audio to connect, refresh. Sometimes that is the best thing to do. So we had in November, because we missed last week, I wasn't able to award the bat that I was going to make for the giveaway. And I ended up making 2. So Eileen, you are the winner of the November episode thread. The prompt was, besides time, what is the hardest thing that you find about your making? And so post number 17, Eileen, Gem 13, says, the hardest thing for me is being consistent. I start out fine, I test all along the way, but when I knit with it, it feels different. Not by much, but different. So I knit shawls or things that don't matter so much. I have spun a sweater and love it, but it's not quite as consistent. I think what Eileen's talking about in terms of consistency is consistency in her yarn. I don't know how long you've been spinning for, Eileen. I think one of those things with that yarn consistency is a lot of practice, mixing up your bobbins so that you're applying your last spun with your first spun to try to even out your yarn. That helps a lot. And I had 2 bats that I made to give away. So I have this ginger colored one. There's some silk noil in there. And lots of different colors. It's mostly like yellows and pinky reds. And then I have this sort of holiday bat, if you will. It's colors of blues and greens, but mostly overall white. And there's some sparkle in there. So Eileen, if you could let me know which one you would like, I will mail that out for you if you could send me your mailing address. And I will get that out as soon as possible. Because we're on holiday hours right now with postal service, you might get it before Christmas, but you also might not. So whichever one you would like, please let me know. And the other one will be for a giveaway for January. So we'll save that for next month. I wanted to tell you about a special that's going on right now for woolen spinning. I took all of our, basically there was 9 months worth of content that we had done for all of our sock study that we did over the last year and a half. And I took all of that content, and as a big thank you to our Patreon community, I have offered a free ebook of that content all compiled into one place, one book with the links to the vlogs for that content that went with it. And those who are in those tiers will have already gotten the notification, but please go and check the special offer on the landing page and download your free ebook. So it took a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of hours. It's something I've been working on in the background all fall. I am very proud of it, and I was so excited to gift it to you guys. And coming up in the next, I think it might be active now, but let me double check and I'll make sure that the links are in the show notes. I also will be sort of releasing, if you will, some hard copies. So I'm not going to do a run of hard copy books. These will be available on the Blurb website, and they will be for order per copy. So if you don't like ebooks, but you really would like a copy of the book, you can order just one copy for yourself. So because they're on a per order basis, they have to print your book, and then they have to send it out. But it's all the months of all the content, which is just really exciting. I was just really, really pleased to be able to do this and to send it out. I'm I'm just over the moon. So I have 2 of these hard copies. I ordered 2 with the intention of giving 1 away on the show. So for December's giveaway, anybody can enter in the December episode thread, and I will send you a hard copy of the book. So in the December episode thread, if you could go in there and let us know, tell us what your experience has been around spinning and knitting socks. Maybe you've not done it yet. Maybe you have plans to do it. Maybe you've done it a ton. And I will mail one of these 2 out to you. So that's pretty exciting. And like I said, the special offer for the free ebook is going on Patreon right now. So if you would like a ebook copy of this for free, all you have to do is sign up on Patreon. Make sure that the tier that you choose is the special offer tier. There's a whole bunch of them, and welcome. So I hope that this is something that you guys enjoy. I wanted some way to like compile all of the information that we had done and all the stuff that we had spent all that time working on into one place that you could download it and have it in your reference library and be able to go through it at your leisure, watch the vlogs. The links are in there. So for those who, if you order the hard copy, then the links aren't printed, but all you have to do is go to the ebook and they're all there. And you can just click on them. So you don't have to like use the ebook for anything other than the links that are in the book. So yeah, I hope that that is something that you guys are excited about. I know I am. It was a lot of work and it was a lot of fun to put together, and it's nice to be able to finally talk about it and finally put it out there. It is going to be a special offer through December. It will not be the last time that it is available, but for Christmas and for getting us through the holiday season and for December, it is a special offer. So enjoy your free ebook. I am feeling better. Thank you, Karma. Yeah, it was not nice to be so sick for so long. So as we get into the show, we've got a little bit of breed and color studies. People are just flying along with the breed and color study, and I'm so excited to share with you a few projects that people have been working on. I have a very quick spinning growth that I wanted to talk about, and then I thought that I would share some of my finished projects with you that I've been working on over the last couple of weeks. And I thought I would show you my progress on my shawl that we talked about last time, because even though it's only been a few weeks, I've actually been able to knit a little bit more on it. Because when I first showed it to you guys, it was like this little teeny triangle, but now I've like got like a fair amount of fabric. So without further ado, let's get into the show. I realized that I didn't queue up the right video for the intro, so just give me a sec because I'm gonna have to switch them over. So I had the nicest comment in the chat. You guys said, I don't know how you found time to put the book together, but I'm glad you did, and a big thank you. I love the book too. I'll have to cross-reference my Handspun pages on the RAV to see twist print and wraps print info so I can really understand the process. You know, it's funny because I wanted to do it so badly, and I've been wanting to put all of that together in one place that you could download it for, like, right from the get-go. That was always the plan. I just never said anything. And I, when I was putting it all together finally was like, you know, doing it, I just kind of found myself thinking, like, I can't believe there's this much content. Like, I can't believe there's this many photographs and this much text. And it was really kind of neat to see all of our work for the How I Spin content kind of come together and it all be in one place. It was really cool. A lot of that content was the stuff, you know, I had written it for the How I Spin content for the Attentive Spinner tier. And, you know, month after month, you know, working through and spinning the yarn and knitting the socks and so on and so forth. It's very methodical. And that all of that stuff was what went into creating the course for the School of Sweet Georgia for the spin to knit socks. So I really wanted to try to find a way to kind of pay it forward, because you guys were the ones that had suggested it in the first place. You guys were the ones that supported it month after month, and you were the ones that were so enthusiastic about it. And yeah, I just felt like the right thing to do. So oh, that's a good goal to have, Rebecca. Once 51 yarns is done, to do your first sock yarn. All right, so let's talk about Breed and Color Studies. This is Megan's project. It's all done. We showed her yarn that she had spun last time. She had done a gradient, and then she'd also done a slubby, thick and thin yarn. And she writes, here's the project, my graffiti scarf. She had posted the yarns in post number 45 under the Breed and Color Studies from October to March thread, which is in the Ravelry group. And the Ravelry group is linked in the show notes down below at patreon.com/WelfordPearls. It was fun to weave an art scarf, quote unquote. I've never done that before. I didn't set the yarns until after I wove the cloth. So she didn't wash them or anything. She waited until after the scarf was done. They were a little twisty to work with, but not too bad. I am not sure it made a big difference in the final scarf, but it was fun to experiment. The Polworth is so soft. Well done, Meg. Just absolutely beautiful. And the yarn that you saw was Maggie's. So this is at Nesting Meg. She posted in post number 55 her finished yarn of the white and the brown. So this was the colorway. I don't know if I have mine. For this Breed and Color Study, we had two colorways. We had the Control colorway, which actually matches what I'm wearing, funnily enough. And then we had the second one, and this was the one that will be sort of the focus of the study. And what Katrina did was she took the original colors that were in the Control, and she added brown, and she left bits of white. So what we're really studying is what happens to that controlled colorway when you add brown and when you add white. So Maggie finished spinning, and she says, I finished spinning the braid with white and brown, and I'm so thrilled with my finished yarn. I still have to spin the other braid and then see how they knit up in a project. But I just wanted to share. I think it's beautiful. I'm so in love with this yarn. What I was really surprised about with this yarn, if you have a look at it quickly before it goes away, let me just take away, sorry Meg, we've seen your stuff, so I'm just going to take away, oh, I just took away her yarn. Hang on, you guys, sorry. This is one really nice thing about the new live stream software that I have. I can do stuff in the moment. So I took away Meg's scarf because it just gets a bit too messy. But Maggie's yarn here, one of the things that I was really surprised about was twofold. First of all, it's very yellow, and which you guys know how I feel about yellow, so of course I don't mind, but it is very yellow. And compared to like my white, there isn't a lot of white in my braid of white. So I thought that was really interesting. And the other thing is the brown really brings out the yellow and makes it very warm. So I feel like when you look at the yarn, part of the reason why it works so beautifully is because the yellow, the red, and the brown are all on the same color side of the color wheel. And so it's very analogous. And then you have these hits of this complementary tealy turquoisey blue, and it's just beautiful. It's very aesthetically pleasing. So, yeah, very well done, Maggie. Just absolutely beautiful. Now we have a really long post from Sarah, but I'm just so excited to share this with you because her yarns are, she's just finished spinning and she's just cast on and started knitting. So these are all of her yarns that she made. And she writes, when she wrote what she wrote, she hadn't spun the third yarn yet. So she had spun what she was calling yarn A and yarn B, which are the top two right here. And then she hadn't quite finished yarn C yet. So I'm reading her entry based on not having finished that yarn C yet. She had started spinning it. I finished my yarn B for my Breed and Color Studies that I'm planning to use in Andrea Mowry's shift cowl. It is basically a white version of yarn A, and then yarn C will be the brown version. I've been doing them as traditional 2-plies because I wanted a 2-ply yarn, and also I wanted to take advantage of optical mixing in the colors. I don't have combs or anything to blend the sections together with, so I have been splitting each chunk vertically into within each section of shade and color, attenuating them a wee bit, so she's been pre-drafting them a little bit, and then combo spinning them with the top of one and the bottom of the other to blend them as much as possible within each chunk. So what she was doing was she was holding multiple colors together so that she could combo draft multiple colors. And actually what we'll do, because we're just being so thorough today, I'm going to add in the photo that she had included that shows all of the chunks. So hopefully this is helpful. So I was definitely glad to have chosen the optical blending advantage of the traditional 2-ply once I got to plying yarn B. There were several plain white sections in each area, and they luckily didn't ply with plain white at any point other than from the other bobbins, so it evened things out. I must have misweighed the yellow though, because I had a lot more yellow on one bobbin, so I had to break it and wind it into a center pull ball to apply the yellow, then join back in with the green that followed, and it finished off fairly matched. I think that's was that for the first yarn that you're talking about, Sarah? Oh. Onto yarn C, loving this little play with color. What I think is really cool about how you guys are approaching your breed and color studies as we go along. So compared to when we very first started, our very first study that we did when we started our breed and color studies was on, I think it was on merino, and we were looking at split complements. And then the next one we looked at split complements again, but carded fiber, and we were on Gotland and BFL. And when I look back at those studies and I look back at where we've come from, we very much kind of spun by the book. Do you know what I mean? Like everybody was sort of like, they, stripped the fiber in, one of 2 or 3 different ways, and then they spun them and then they plied them together, and that was kind of the yarn. And it was sort of either a 2-ply or a 3-ply, and very, what I would kind of call traditional spinning. And what I've really noticed over time, over these last few years, as we've been doing these studies, because we've been doing 2 per year, one comb top and then the second one carded, and we keep going back and forth. So we'll look at white and brown on comb top, and then the next study we'll look at white and brown on when it's carded. And over time, people have just progressively become more and more and more experimentational. That they're willing to kind of look at the fiber and say, number 1, the sheep are going to grow more fiber, so I'm not going to worry about ruining or wrecking this. Number 2, I want to see what I can eke out of this in terms of how far can I push the colors one way or another. And number 3, really sharing their projects and other people kind of picking up on what they've done and running with it. And I think that's just amazing. It's fantastic. So well done to Megan, Maggie, and Sarah. Yeah, the yarn, Erica, you're right. She says, wow, what a great process in the resulting yarn. Absolutely. So it was yarn B that had the yellow issue. That makes sense. Yeah, so beautiful. Yeah. It's actually kind of funny because I've been experiencing a lot of almost like start-itis with this. I have not been able to start my breed and color studies. And Sarah posted her photos of this photo of her starting her shift cowl. And Megan last week had posted her scarf. And I love that she calls it the graffiti scarf, because Katrina called this colorway graffiti. And I just felt like I'd been so stuck and wasn't sure what I wanted to do with it, and really having a bit of a creative roadblock. And I wasn't concerned and I wasn't particularly worried, but I was sort of like, oh, you know, I'm really just not sure. But seeing your guys' experimentation has really like kickstarted me. And yesterday it just hit me like a Mack truck, and I know exactly what I'm going to do with my fiber, and I've started to prep it, and that's really exciting. So well done, you guys. Yeah, people are way more brave about mixing it up. You're right, Diane. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Yeah, it's really cool to see what people are doing. Startophobia, totally. Yeah. I guess startitis is when you start, like, when you make more and more and more, like when you're casting on constantly. Whereas startophobia is like not being able to start. I wasn't too concerned. I knew it would like work itself out, but you know, you just never know. So on to spinning growth. Spinning growth is a thread in the Ravelry group. Anybody can throw their yarns and projects in there. And basically it's an opportunity for us as a community to have a look at our yarns and to have a look at our finished projects and to reflect upon what went well and what didn't go so well. And it's an opportunity to grow. It's not an opportunity for us to sit here and you know, be really super hypercritical and really super negative. It's an opportunity to look at what we've made and what we've done, and then have an opportunity to grow and to learn. It's really hard to get better at anything if we're not engaging in that reflective process. It's one thing to spend 10,000 hours doing something, but if you're doing the same thing over and over again, it's very difficult to get any better. If we spend 10,000 hours of intentional practice and intentionally trying to get better, then we will. And so this spinning growth this month really resonated with me, because the finished project that Wendy had knit is absolutely gorgeous. It is so beautiful. And so then to go and read what she had written really made me realize that it's not just in the eye of the beholder and, oh yeah, it's beautiful and you shouldn't be so critical and walk away, but to really sort of listen to what that person's saying, because yes, absolutely it's beautiful, but she did have some issues, and it's a good lesson in learning. So this is what she wrote. Here's my spinning growth. I bought a beautiful gradient skein. She said skein, but she means fiber, from Hilltop Cloud. I wanted to make something really special for it for myself, showing off the beautiful color changes. I agree that the color in that original roving, it is just beautiful. I split it in two, so she split it lengthwise down the length of the fiber, and spun both halves to a bobbin and then plied them together to make a 2-ply gradient yarn. I didn't take a photo of the yarn and then searched for a pattern for a scarf. It needed to be just right. I chose this one, Dreambird Cowl. So the pattern and what she chose is linked in the show notes. And she cast on. It was my quote-unquote train work for knitting on the train on the way home. So it took me about 10 months though it did go on hold for a short while, to make some baby cardigans. And I just didn't like it. I know the photo is gorgeous. What happened? It starts with the plying. I wanted the colors to match up, but they started to drift apart from each other in the plying. Rather than break the slow changing ply and lose some yardage, I carried on and on. Still unhappy about the matching of the colors. Yes, I know the scarf looks great, but it's just not quite the vision. Then, having found the pattern, I jumped straight in and started knitting. No swatching. The pattern didn't help, as the way it's knit doesn't lend itself to understanding how the final project will end up. You knit the feather section by section, gradually moving around the curve. I thought from the start that the scarf was going to be too narrow, but couldn't quite work out how wide it would be, so I carried on. There's a theme here. She keeps saying, so I carried on. So just keep that in the back of your mind. It seemed to take forever to see the colors change, but I kept on going and going until I used up all the gradient yarn. So it's really a bit long for what I tend to wear. It dangles in the water when I wash up. Added to that, about halfway around, I decided that the inner edge knits with a little too much give, with too little give in it. Sorry about that. The edge is made up from cast off stitches, which doesn't have much give, and that's the bit which is around the neck. So if you pull it, it's like cheese wire. Something like an I-cord would be nicer, but the cast offs are done as you knit the feathers, so there's no way to go back. Looking at the pictures of other people's projects, I realized that largely my expectations of width were wrong too. They are not that wide. What did I learn? Pay attention to color changes and break a ply if needed. Swatch even if it's hard to analyze the pattern. Really study other people's pictures for the aspects you're interested in and listen to your instincts. I knew the pattern wasn't working for what I wanted quite early on, but convinced myself it would be fine. It's still a lovely scarf, and I've had compliments in the supermarket on it, but I don't love it and will probably rehome it. So this is something that we have all experienced. It's part of the reason why I wanted to share it. We've all been there. And there were some really, really supportive words from the community. So Susan wrote, "Thank you for sharing. It's beautiful, but I totally get your disappointment. However, it's heartening to me to hear someone else say, so I carried on. I do that thinking that somehow things will magically work out. The uneven color in the ply will even out. The cast off will loosen up. The size will somehow just adjust. Congratulations on persevering. Someone will be very lucky and appreciative when and if you do rehome it." And Tessa wrote, "I can identify with your challenges here. I see the issues developing, but nevertheless, I persist when stopping and reconsidering would be my best course of action." What stops us from stopping, I wonder? Is a very good question, Tessa. I try to remind myself not to be like Homer Simpson chasing his roasted pig through Springfield. It's just a little slimy. It's still good. It's still good. If I'm starting to make excuses, I need to stop. Really, like it's time to stop. I know I should be stopping now. Sigh, I often fail to follow my own advice and end up not as happy with a project as I could have been. At least you have a beautiful scarf to show for it. So thank you to everybody, and thank you for the support from the community that you showed Wendy. I think this is one of those things, we've talked about this on the podcast before, when you're wanting a specific product and you've got these expectations around what you want that product to look like, we forget that during the process, there's these little, I think of them as like little warning signs, these little yellow flags that come up that we often need to heed, and we need to slow down, and we need to really think about how we're going to proceed. And I am guilty of it, as is everybody else in the chat. I'm sure we've all been there. But really, when we have those niggly little feelings, we do need to slow ourselves down, and we really do need to think about what are our expectations? How do we manage those expectations? Are we just planning for disappointment? And is there a better way to carry forward, even if it means ripping something out? So thank you so much, Wendy, for your humility and for sharing that with us. Joanna, that's a really interesting comment. So she said, people often love the things I am most unhappy with. Isn't that the truth? I find that as well. All right. I have some finished stuff, or some finished stuff to show you. So let's talk about that stuff. Isn't that sort of mild salt on the wound too? It's so true, Diane. Hey, you know, when you're most unhappy with something and then somebody's like, "Oh, I absolutely love that." And you're like, "Really?" It's true. Instagrammable versus pleasing to make. Isn't that the truth? So I'm just going to scroll back in the chat for just a sec, and then we're going to talk about this amazing yarn here. So I'll let you look at the pretty yarn while I'm just looking at the chat and catching up a little bit. Rebecca said, oh my gosh, startitis, inflammation of the starts. You guys are hilarious. Okay, expectations. I thought that was a fascinating post. It's always possible to power through and make a beautiful Instagrammable thing, but that's not the same as achieving your artistic vision. Yeah. Instagrammable versus pleasing to make. That is so true. It's really interesting. I've really found that some of the stuff that photographs the best and looks the most amazing on Instagram and might get, 300, 400, 500 likes, is not necessarily the stuff that I'm most proud of, which is really interesting. The stuff that I end up being most proud of is the stuff that often isn't perfect and often isn't quite so Instagrammable. And that's something I think we probably can spend some time discussing in the new year, because so many things in our world and in our lives is geared towards social media and making it pretty, quote unquote, for social media. And what does that really mean, and how does that really affect us in our making? Does it mean our expectations are too high, or does it mean we need to manage our expectations a little bit better? Yeah, we could talk about this for hours. Makes you wonder who you're trying to please, and also who you're trying to impress. Is it an ego thing where you need that outside justification or that outside stroking of the ego? Oh, that's so beautiful, that's so wonderful, blah, 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 blah. Or are you making stuff because you truly love to make and because it doesn't matter what other people think? I think it would be really hard on an ongoing long-term basis to constantly be putting your work out there, like we do on the podcast, for example, you guys sharing in the Ravelry group or sharing on the Slack channel or me sharing on the podcast, to be constantly putting your stuff out there and opening yourself up for criticism. If you really, what really kind of gave you kicks or what kind of stroked your ego was just praise, or just praise, basically somebody saying, oh, that's beautiful. That would become very challenging, I think, long-term, if you needed that validation all the time, particularly like on the podcast, because, people can be very hurtful, and they can say very hurtful things. They can leave comments that are very hurtful. And if you're taking all of that personally all the time, it would really affect how you perceive yourself and your making and the stuff that you make. I might make some yarn and I might absolutely love it, and you guys might say, really, Rach? Like, that's terrible yarn. And that would just rip me down if that was all I was motivated by. It was very interesting. Intrinsic motivation versus extrinsic motivation. I'm just going to move this stuff out of the way because I don't want it to get ruined. I don't want it to get roughed up. They are very summery. Yeah, the colors in this yarn, they're very, very primary. It's been in my stash since sorry for the crinkling, 2016. Isn't that crazy? Okay, so let me move this out of the way. I'll talk about this in just a sec. This sparkly yarn that I made just on a complete whim. It was so much fun to make. So this yarn is Corespun. I haven't really talked about this on the podcast at all. I kind of just made it, and I made it within like a couple of hours, and it went so quickly that I ended up really not having an opportunity to talk about it with you guys. And because of the little gap that we had with the podcast, sort of by accident because of being sick, I never got an opportunity to really share this with you. So this was the SweetGeorgia Spectra 6-pack. 6 hues of superwash BFL for mixing, matching, and playing. 1 ounce each. And this was the prize or the giveaway. I'm not really sure how to describe it. The thank you for spinning with Team SweetGeorgia in 2016 for Spinzilla. So it was really lovely of Felicia and her team to give this away. It was really lovely. It was a big tube of fiber. I don't know where the tube has gone. I've been trying to clear out, and my ever ongoing aspirations of minimalism, which you guys know all about. It's a good thing I can laugh at myself, because sometimes I really wonder if I'm ever going to be able to attain this idea that I have in my head for what our house will look like. But anyways, I think I got rid of the tube, but anyways, There were 6 colors. Juice Box, Orchid. So this was Juice Box. Orchid is this pink color. Persimmon, which is this orange right here. Isn't that gorgeous? It's like this peachy color. Oh, I just love it. Lemon Curd, which was the yellow. Okay, so in this chunk of fiber, there's the yellow in there, right there. And then Melon, which is the green. So there's some of this is green, some of this is yellow. And the final color was Glacier, which is that blue. So what I did was I took each of the 1 ounce bundles, and I ended up doing it on my drum carder. Originally I was going to hackle it, but I ended up putting it on my drum carder. I mixed in some white raw fleece that had been sent to me that was washed and cleaned, and because I wanted to lighten the colors. They're so bright. Like when you look at that, like look at how bright those colors are. They are pretty offensive. And I mean offensive in like a good way. Like they're just really bright. And so I wanted to tone them down a little bit and create a little bit of heathering in the yarn with the white. And I only put them on my drum carder once, so they weren't super, super, super blended. And then I also added in some clear undyed Firestar that I also had in my stash. And I don't know if you can really see here, but it's in there. And it just gives it that offensive sparkle. I say offensive because Katrina's always teasing me because I really love, I like putting a bit of sparkle into stuff sometimes, and it's not her favorite. And so we kind of tease each other about it. But it's a massive skein. It's absolutely huge. It's very heavy. And I Corespun around worsted weight yarn. So it's very, very dense. And it's heavy. And I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but it was fun. And as you guys know who are doing the 51 yarns spin along, January 2020 coming up is Corespun. So I wanted to re-record a little bit of video, just a couple of tiny few seconds long segments to share with you guys. So that is that yarn. It's just fun working through stash, you know, like just freeing up stash. There's some areas that this ended up, it's a little bit curly-Q and a little bit twisty because it's a little bit thinner, but that'll come out depending on what I do with it. When it's held under tension, it'll come out. I'm actually wondering about maybe knitting with this because I intentionally Corespun S, so to the left, S direction, so that if I wanted to knit with it, I wouldn't unknit it. Because if I spin to Z direction, I unknit stuff because of how I knit. So I was sort of thinking that maybe just for fun, I would knit with this because I've not really ever knit with Handspun. I thought like a big chunky cowl, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. But it was really fun to make. It was really fast. It was just fun, you know. For our 51 yarn spin along, there was a big call from the community to restart this study all over again. So we had started this study at the beginning of this year, at the beginning of 2019 in January. If you are interested in starting all over again from the beginning in January next month, have a look at Patreon for the Group B. And Group B will be starting at the beginning in January with their own thread on Ravelry, their own videos and downloads and whatnot. If you join just the Group B spin along, then you'll get the vlog every month. But if you join the Thoughtful Spinner Group B, then you'll get the PDF as well. So if that's something that would interest you, have a look on Patreon. We would love to have you. I think we start off the first couple months, we look at wool classifications, and then from there we move into yarn structure, and it's just an awesome thing. If you're struggling to take your spinning skills from sort of like you feel like you've plateaued a little bit, it's a great study to engage in to really grow and push yourself out of your comfort zone. You don't need to spin huge swaths of yarn. A lot of people have been doing just sampling with, an ounce, 15, 20 grams each month so that they can keep up. See how big this is? It's like as big as my head. And it's heavy. This is over 100 grams of worsted weight that it's Corespun around. So it's probably about 6 ounces plus 150 grams. Somebody can do the math. The core is just worsted weight stuff that I had in my stash. Just basically junk yarn. Yeah, nothing interesting. Just something that I could use up and get rid of. So this little skein here is this little homemade bat that I made. And it's very sparkly. It was this bat that I made. It's very similar to this one. So I basically made 2 of these. And I divided it in half and I just started spinning. And I made 2 singles. And there's silk and oil in here and there's some sparkle. It's very stiff, this yarn. It doesn't have any give. It's not elastic at all. Like it's completely, there's no give to it at all. And I was worried that I was going to kind of ruin it, if you will, but I 2-plied it. Let's see if I can hold this up so you guys can really see. I 2-plied it and I added a ton of twist when I was 2-plying. Here, let me see if I can hold it for you. See if you can really see that. And then that gold thread that's wrapped around it is this like awful 2-ply nylon, blah, blah, blah. It's nothing special. I found it at Michael's and I creped it. So I had the 2-ply underneath and then I creped the yarn. So actually if I switch my cameras for just a sec, I'll hold it up close to the camera so you guys can really see the detail. So hopefully that helps a little bit with being able to see it. And the reason, and I was going to put beads on this, and it was going to be, I didn't have my jumbo head on my Lendrum hooked up, and to be honest with you, I was being lazy. I felt myself getting sick, and I just couldn't be bothered. So what this is for is to go on this. So I haven't done it yet. I'm hoping to get it done this week or something. And the batteries are dead because the kids will not stop turning it on. But basically, there's this beaded stuff that goes around the, I put that on the wreath. So I bought the wreath and then there's this thing here. And this is the battery pack, but the kids, yeah, the batteries are dead because the kids would not stop playing with it and turning it on. But these light up. And then I'm going to take this yarn and it's going to get wrapped around. And then I've got a couple of pine cones that we harvested, if you will, last winter. And they're all dry. There's no insects in them anymore. And I'm going to put them down here. And I've got some bells to put on. And I'm going to finally, for the first time ever, have a Christmas wreath. Because I've never had a wreath before. I'm really excited. So that's what I'm working on. And it's just purely for fun. So hopefully next episode before Christmas, I'll be able to show you guys the finished wreath. And hopefully the batteries won't be dead and it'll be lit up. So my original plan was that it was going to be an outdoor wreath, but I'm not sure that I'm going to do that after all. I probably will put it on the door outside on Christmas Eve, and then I'll bring it inside, and then I'll put it out again on Christmas Day. But I didn't really want it to be out on the door outside overnight. So, because I don't want this to get ruined, the yarn. So yeah, really cool. I got the idea from, it is very seasonal. I'm not really into Christmas this year. I'm not really feeling the Christmas thing this year because of everything that's happened this year and missing my dad. So I decided, so it was Katrina actually with her garland that she was making in her thick and thin, and she spiral applied it and she had all these beads and it just turned out beautifully. And, so we went to Michael's together to see if she could get some more beads for her garland. And I kind of just, the creative juices just started to flow. And I just thought, you know what? I'm going to do something that I normally wouldn't do. And I've always wanted a wreath. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to make one. So there you go. Yeah, I'll definitely show it to you guys for sure. So unfortunately, I'm halfway through a row, but this is Hyssop. And you can see how far I am compared to last time, because last time I was like down here. And I don't think I'm close enough to the end of a row to be able to knit it and chat with you guys for a minute and get it done. So I'll just lay it here for you, and I'll talk about it a little bit. So this is reclaimed handspun yarn from my, what was it called? The Shoreline Vest, I think it was called. And I ripped out the Shoreline Vest and I washed all of the yarn. So this is Kramer Yarns Merino Roving, and it was 50-50 wool, merino wool, and alpaca. And I had spun it as part of a yarn review years ago. Like we're talking like, I think it's back in like 2017 or 2016. I can look it up really quickly because it's under my Handspun page on Ravelry. And I don't really know what my yardage was. I had an incredible amount of yardage. I don't really know what my actual finished yardage was. So the original fiber that I had was in the colorway rose gray. So that means the merino and the alpaca were gray. I had a total of 500 plus, so 860. I had 860 yards, and it was a light fingering 2-ply, and I over dyed the rose gray with logwood at 1% depth of shade. And I never wore the vest. I never wore it. I washed it a couple of times to like try to revitalize it, and I never wore it. So this pattern is out of this book, To the Point by Layla Raven, The Knitted Triangle. I got this book at my local yarn shop. It's just come out. It's a Quince and Company book. And the shawl that I'm making is called Hyssop. I'll see if I can find a picture of it for you. The reason why I chose it is because of the wrapped stitches. So those stitches at the bottom of each of the diamonds on the side of the diamonds are wrapped. And I felt like it was just such a wonderful way to really showcase handspun. And that's the whole point, is wanting to often showcase our handspun. And I've been looking for patterns that really showcase our handspun. And this one I just kept coming back to again and again and again. Why didn't I wear it? So there are several reasons. I have spent quite a bit of time thinking about this. The first was that the way that the vest was, I'll see if I can pull up a picture to show you guys, because then you can really get a sense of what I mean. Because of my shape, and because I am quite bottom heavy, so I'm an hourglass, I'm a true hourglass. My shoulders are the same width as my hips, but the vest comes down in the back, and so the shape of it, let me find this. The shape of it never hung straight on me. It almost kind of bunched up. And you can see in this photo what I mean by that. See how in the photo it, let me just hold it so that it is still and not glary. You see how around the waist there's all that extra fabric that's kind of like gathered and bunched? It's because my hips are so wide, and the fabric and the sweater didn't ever hang properly as a result. And so the couple of times that I did wear it, it didn't hang properly, and I felt it, like it wasn't quite right. And then the other problem was the shoulders, the yoke, what would be the yoke of a sweater, the yoke of the vest, it was too narrow. So if you were wearing like a long sleeve shirt, which was my original plan for this, was to wear a long sleeved round neck shirt and have the vest over top, it just was too narrow. Like it just didn't look right. And then you really have to have it buttoned up to have it sit properly. Because if you leave it open, it kind of just hangs. And if it was just hanging there, I would rather have 3/4 length or full length sleeves so that it was a cardigan. Because if it's unbuttoned and hanging open, I just didn't really see the point. Does that make sense? So there were a few things. You can really see in this photo here how it didn't hang properly. You see how it pulls. Here, I'm just trying to get the glare. Sorry, guys. Maybe it's better if it's down here. I know it's not as big, but hopefully you guys can bear with me a little bit. See how it just doesn't hang properly along the sides there? And that was on me as well as on the dress form, because my dress form is set at my size. And like, it just doesn't hang properly. So all that bunching back here, it's annoying. And then I felt like I was constantly going like this. Like I was constantly like fixing it. And it's just, it doesn't sit right. It's not right. So there's a lot of knitting. I think one of the things that I will say is it was knit beautifully. So in terms of like positives, it was knit really beautifully. The fabric was really beautiful. All the finishing touches and everything were really nicely done. And it was actually quite difficult to reclaim the yarn because I'd woven in my ends really super well. It was just very finished. But if I'm not going to wear it, and I love the yarn so much that I wanted to reclaim it and I wanted to make something that I would really enjoy. So this yarn was actually never knit with. It was left over. And this is the beginnings of the shawl. So hopefully you guys can see it there. I know it's dark. These are all the wrapped stitches. And I think one of the things and one of the reasons why I like this so much is that you can really see the diamonds in real life. It's probably a bit difficult to see on the live stream, but you can really see the diamonds, and the yarn really gets shown off every time there's these wraps here. Like, it's just really, really pretty. It's a lovely use of the yarn, and it's very slow. It's just taking forever. Every time you come to the row that you have to do the wrap stitches, you're knitting, bring the yarn to the front, put the stitches back on the left needle, wrap around, move the stitches back, wrap around again. It's labor intensive. So I think, like the Sparks of Grey shawl, this is going to take a long time, and that's okay. I'm totally okay with that. So I also changed the gauge, so you can see, like, I've still got a long ways to go. You knit the body of the shawl, and then if you noticed in that pattern, I'll just show it to you one more time just to show you what I'm talking about. Then I'll have a look at chat. You do the garter border all the way around afterwards. So you finish up, you knit all of this in here, and then once you get to the top, there's a series of things that you have to do. And I'm not sure if you do the top edging first and then you pick up the bottom. I'm not totally sure. I think you cast off and then you work the rest of it. And this is done with increases down here, I'm pretty sure. I haven't read through the whole pattern yet. I kind of feel like that's a future Rachel problem. I'll get there when I get there. Now the pattern is for an Aran weight yarn. So we have been talking a lot in the Slack channel and on the wool stream about substituting handspun for commercial yarn. And this is a great example. So this yarn is the Osprey by Quince & Company. It is I think it's an Aran weight yarn. It's an Aran weight yarn if my memory serves. And the pattern calls for 5.5 millimeter needles. So I am knitting fingering weight, and I am knitting on 4 millimeter needles. So a pretty big difference. I also have 860 yards to play with, and this pattern calls for 5 skeins of 175 yards. So basically what I'm banking on is that, given my yardage and how much yarn that I have, I'm just going to knit until I like the size. And if I'm running out of yarn and I don't have enough to do the garter stitch border, I have more of this fiber in my stash. I'll do one of two things. I'll either spin the rest of it so that I have enough to do the border, and I'll dye it, or I'll choose a contrasting yarn to knit the garter stitch border out of. But I suspect I'll do the first. If I run out of yarn, I'll just spin up the rest of the roving that I have, because it was a roving prep, and I will finish off the border. So I'm not concerned about running out of yarn. This ball was the same weight as this little ball here, and that's how far I got. And then I have, from ripping out the sweater, I have all of this. Excuse my cough. Sorry, you guys. I have all of that left. So I've got those as well. So I think I'm going to be fine. I haven't washed these two yet. I'm going to skein them, wash them, get all the kinks out. This was ripped vest, and I skeined it, washed it, and it came out beautifully. So I'm going to do the same with these ones, and I will report back. Yeah, it's a great texture. I think of that construction as the bum grabbing short rows. I can see how that wouldn't work for everyone. I have a lot of trouble with things not hanging properly at the bottom. Yeah, you know, it's funny, like, when stuff doesn't hang properly, and when you have all of that extra fabric down there, or you have it bunching up around your waist, it can be totally fine and it can work. But I think, unfortunately, for the majority of people, myself included, it's annoying. It doesn't do anything for you. And I would personally it's better to just rip it and move on. So I finished something. It's on my dress form behind me, so I'm going to move her up. I love the diamonds in the garter border. Makes it look so cozy. I agree. And that's why I kept coming back to it over and over and over again. I really wasn't sure if it was the right pattern. I cast on for a different one out of the book, and then I ripped it out and I started again. Sometimes it's hard to know, you know, you sort of think, like, you know, trust your intuition. It goes back to what we were talking about earlier in the show. But I think it's really important to kind of look at this stuff and be like, how am I going to show off the handspun? Like, if that's the priority, is showing off the handspun and making some of these patterns work for handspun, what does that look like, and how can I do that? And sometimes the original pattern that you chose isn't necessarily the one that you go with. And so in this case for me, I ripped out and started again. So I made a scarf. This yarn has been in my stash forever. And it was these singles that I had spun for the 2017 Spin the Bin, which is a spin along that is on the Completely Twisted and Arbitrary group on Ravelry. I don't know if they still do Spin the Bin, but I'm positive that they probably do. Anyways, these singles, the fiber was really super fulled and felted when I went to spin it. It was a nightmare to spin. I had a second braid of this stuff, and I threw it in the compost. It's so fulled, and I was playing with it yesterday, and I just finally thought, you know what, life's too short, and I put it in the compost. It was very liberating in some ways, because once coffee grounds went on top of it, then I knew that I couldn't pull it out. And so this... the singles I pulled out of my stash, and Nora's been asking for a little scarf, and she wanted something, and I just thought, you know what, these are felted singles, because what I did when I finished these singles was I completely folded them in really super hot water. So I went back and forth from hot to cold to hot to cold to hot to cold, and they had no elasticity left in them, and my plan was to eventually weave something. And so I pulled out the yarn, and the yarn was spun as a gradient, because it was the comb top went from this pink through to the yellow, through to this grayish color, through to the greeny blue. And I had split the roving in half lengthwise and just spun each to a bobbin thinking that I would 2-ply it. But because it was so fold, the singles were a lot thicker than I had originally thought that they would be or planned. And so I had left them as 2 gradient yarn singles, each 50 grams. And then I wasn't sure what to do because I had these 2 singles yarns that weren't 100 grams for a full gradient, but 250 grams instead. And so I'd always thought, well, I'll just weave with them eventually. So that's what I did. So I put this on my little 10-inch samplet from Ashford, and I do have some yarn left over. So I knew when I was weaving that I wasn't going to get through all of the yarn. When I got to the end, I knew that I was getting... So you can see how the yarn moves from yellow in the weft. I know it's hard to see, but it moves from yellow in the weft. So look at the weft, don't look at the warp. So the warp is the colors running this way. So the yellow, the pink, the blue, green. But you can see that there is the yellow in the warp. And it was supposed to move through to gray, which is about here. And then it would go all the way through the gray and then all the way into the seafoam green. So you can see the seafoam green there in the weft. So those are the threads going this way. But I realized that I was getting to the end of the warp. And so in the end, I decided to actually cut the gray out. So I had this on my skein, on my Swift, and I took from the end. So instead of winding my bobbin with more gray, I took it from... Sorry, my phone just started ringing. That's really weird because I keep it turned off when I'm podcasting. I took it from the end that was the sea foam. So the end of the skein to wind the last bobbin. So I ended up with a little bit of gray in there. And that finished it off with the hem stitching in the green as well. So a little bit of gray got in there as well, but that's okay. So it started off with pink in the weft and moved through the pink. Pink, 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 pink. There's a ton of pink. And then this is yellow. The weft yarn here is yellow. And then finally into the gray and into the seafoam green. And the interesting thing is, even though these singles were really quite fulled and really quite felted from the finishing process, you can really see how the fringe, how they really kind of came back to life. Like they ended up being really, really, I don't know what the right word is. They got really like curly Q and crimpy again. I don't know if it's better to see it with the book over top. Something for the camera to focus on. I'll move behind. There we go. So you see how they got really crimpy and really kind of curly Q. So really beautiful. I was going to twist the fringe, but they're felted and fold singles. And so I sort of thought, you know, I'm just going to leave them and see what happens. And if Nora starts to really wear this a lot and it starts to get ruined, then I'll twist the fringe and I'll do two by two. So I'll do two, I'll twist them like, so it's like 1 by 1 so that they're really fine. So that they would be like that. And nice and small. But for now, I'm going to leave them just as is with just unfinished fringe. So yeah, it's cute. It looks nice on her. I tried to get some photos of her, but because we've all been sick, I just haven't had a chance yet. But it's cute. It's nice to get some of the yarn. Like it was a vision that I'd had for so long that it was nice to just pull it out, work on it when I was sick, and weave it off, you know? I feel like there's been this theme for the last couple of projects that I've made. So like with this yarn for my wreath and the Corespun, and now with this, I feel like there's like this theme of just playfulness and wanting to just experiment, not being too worried about the results, and just approaching stuff from a perspective of just wanting to make something. And it's been really liberating. It's really fun. And I think that's why I finally got unblocked about the breed and color study, because I thought, well, if I'm this blocked and I can't think about I can't figure out what I want to do with the fiber, I'm just going to set it aside and make some stuff that I'm just excited about and looking forward to. And sure enough, it unblocked me, and I know exactly what I want to do with the breed and color study. So that's pretty cool. Hi to Becca. It's good to see you. I know 11 is a little bit early for you because you're still in the midst of bedtime. So it's good to see you, Becca. What a great use for semi-felted fiber. Totally. When I started spinning the other braid though that I have of this stuff, I just couldn't do it because I had struggled through this so much and it hurt my wrist so much to get this spun. And so when I was looking at it yesterday and playing with it, I was like, nope, life's too short, and out it went. So at least I got one project out of the 2 braids. This is kind of nice. I think that's everything for today. I had finished really quickly. I had finished some gingham towels. They were on my compact back there for a long, long time. But I talked about these yesterday in the wool stream. It's 2/8 cotton, set at 18 ends per inch. And we talked about them quite a bit yesterday. These are Christmas gifts. So if you're interested in talking a little bit more about weaving and capsule wardrobe and stuff, please head over to the wool stream, which is part of the Patreon stuff. Because we talk about a lot of these projects that we just don't have time for on the podcast. We just can't get to everything. But I'm really happy with how these turned out. I have 4 of them. 2 of them are going to go to my brother and sister-in-law, and then the other 2 are going to go to 2 different friends. So they're each going to get 1, and my brother and sister-in-law are going to get 2. I'm really pleased with how they turned out. They're all pinned because I need to hem them. So that's sort of something I have to get done this week. So yeah, thank you, you guys. Yeah, they turned out really well. I'm really happy with them. They were something that I kind of drew out in my sketchbook, and I thought, well, I'm going to see if I can make those. And they turned out really well. And then I ran out of white. I didn't tell you guys this on the wool stream yesterday. I ran out of the white warp. So this warp and weft yarn, it's just plain white. It's not cream. It's not anything special. It's just white. And I ran out. And so I asked Katrina if she had any, because she had just ordered a whole bunch of 2/8 cotton weaving yarns. And she said, yeah, I do. So I borrowed it from her. And the idea was I was just going to take what I needed to finish off the warp, because I knew I was like this close. Anyways, when I got home, I dumped coffee all over it by accident. So I bought her a replacement, and I kept the one that's now coffee stained. Because the thing is, I knew once they got washed, it would come out, which it did. And it wasn't so bad, but I felt so badly. So I bought her a new white cone, and I kept the stained one. What reed did you use for the towels at 18 ends per inch? I used a 12. The lady that I bought the compact from, she had an 8, 10, and a 12 dent reed. So when I'm doing the 18 ends per inch, I've been using the 12 reed. Yeah. Sitting here hemming kitchen towels for Christmas gifts too. Oh, that's awesome, Rebecca. All right, I'm going to say goodbye. We are a little bit over time, and it's just such a pleasure to chat with you guys. We have another live stream next Wednesday because we had to bump this show forward by 1 week. So this show will be released this weekend, probably at Friday night. I think that's sort of what we're going to get into in terms of the schedule. So we'll have the live stream on the Wednesday morning, and then we'll release the show publicly on Friday evening, and that will kind of be the routine going forward. I hope you guys have a wonderful week. If you're preparing for the holiday and for the Christmas season, I hope that it's going well. And until next time, happy spinning. Bye, guys.